top stories this evening, sponsored by Courts Bringing Value Home. President livid over EU observer mission's final report on the conduct of the 2025 electoral process. Claudette Singh accused of decommissioning the commission. Two opposition-nominated commissioners say abide by the law or resign. Operation Project MYRA, serial car thief details luxury car scheme. PPP see government in no-show at IACHR hearing on dysfunctional freedom of information system. And in sport, Culture Ministry steps up support for men's and women's rugby sevens squad. HGP Nightly News begins now. Good evening to our viewers here in Guyana and online. I'm ALETHEA Grant with the Thursday, 20th November 2025 edition of the HGP Nightly News. This is what you should know this evening. President Irfan Ali was livid in denouncing the European Union Observer Mission's report into the 2025 general and regional election process. Marvin Cato opens tonight's broadcast.
The reports speak about uneven playing field and undue advantage by incumbency, which I find ridiculous, to say the least.
That was President Irfan Ali, who was visibly upset at the fact that the EU Observer Mission report on elections 2025 pointed to the fact that the incumbency had an unfair advantage in the recently concluded election.
This comment is not based on any facts. It is based primarily on complaints by political participants in the elections.
The president accused the mission of being infiltrated by persons with an agenda and who has ties to the opposition.
It is important in report writing for us to understand who is writing the reports and who is influencing the reports.
Clearly not jet-lagged from his trip to Jamaica, the president swung from the hills in his disparaging of the EU Observer Mission report.
To adhere to international best practices in the hiring of local staff. If you go through some of the staff that were hired in this process by the EU, you would have to question those persons' independence because they're associated with or are in association with persons who would have expressed partisan positions.
When it came to the matter of evidence of the incumbent's use of state resources for partisan party purposes, though the EU team highlighted in its report the use of state vehicles in indigenous regions, the president just stopped short of saying that's a lie.
We made it very clear that in any system, there are disadvantages to incumbency and advantages to incumbency.
The EU report, though commending EDE activities, blasted the entirety of the election process, pointing to the fact that there were domination and control in almost every aspect of the electoral process by the incumbent. Marvin Cato reporting for HGP Nightly News.
Chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission, Justice retired Claudette Singh, is being accused of decommissioning the electoral body, with two of the opposition-appointed commissioners voicing grave concerns and a call for her to demit office. Antonio Day reports.
Vincent Alexander and Desmond Trotman, two opposition-nominated commissioners at the Guyana Elections Commission, GECOM, have issued a public rebuke of the elections oversight body chairperson, retired Justice Claudette Singh. The duo in a letter on Thursday said that the chair not only failed to properly declare the 2025 election results, but has now unilaterally decommissioned the commission to avoid accountability. In their letter, the commissioners reminded that they had abstained from approving the 2025 results, arguing that doing so would have legitimized what they described as constitutional infringements, since the electoral process did not meet the legitimate expectations and the disenfranchisement of voters. Among those disenfranchised were prisoners, offshore workers, and party agents who worked outside their assigned divisions. The conscious retention of thousands of dead persons on the voters list, both overseas and locally known deceased persons, among other procedural and substantive infringements, all of which are verifiable, were acknowledged, but deemed by GECOM to be beyond its scope of rectification, the commissioners noted. The Commission's chairperson expressly presided over all of the aforementioned matters, this failing to comply with Sections 19(6) and 99 of the Representation of the People Act, which require her to present the report on the regional elections to the full Commission and to publicly declare the results. The commissioners noted her failure to abide by the Constitution. According to Alexander and Trotman, the worst came after the polls when the chair allegedly declared that the commission was no longer properly constituted, effectively stripping commissioners of their status. They said that the chair relied on her own interpretation of Article 163 of the Constitution to do so, even as she continued to administer the commission and approve major decisions, including what they described as huge bonuses for the chief elections officer. They argued that the move is both unprecedented and outside her authority. The commissioners say that they received a notice of dismissal along with the gazetted results they maintain were never publicly declared as required by law. They also contend that even if the chair's interpretation of Article 163 were eventually upheld, then by the same token by which she unilaterally seeks to dismiss the commissioners, she could demit office and not unilaterally preside over GECOM. The commissioners insist that GECOM's 2025 elections report must still be presented to the full body and that they, having presided over the elections, are entitled to participate in the post-election review, including consideration of the European Union Observer Mission's report. They accuse the chair of blocking that process through what they describe as an unauthorized act of disemboweling the commission. Antonio Day reporting for the HGP Nightly News.
As the files from Operation Project MYRA continues to unravel, Travis Chase reports on the sworn testimony of a serial car thief whose tentacles have reached the shores of Guyana.
As the Guyana Revenue Authority maintains silence, Operation Project MYRA had uncovered what investigators now describe as a massive, long-running, transnational luxury car duty evasion ring with deep roots in Guyana and very high connections. A serial car thief alleged that a well-known Guyanese car dealership has for years been importing stolen or fraudulently obtained high-end vehicles using fake documents, altered titles, engineered VINs, downgraded engine specifications, and false reclassification of taxes. The sources say luxury models including Range Rovers, Jeep Gladiators, Lexus RX 350s, Tacomas, Honda CR-Vs, and even slingshot vehicles with its VIN removed were brought into Guyana under forged paperwork. A highly classified document seen by Nightly News alleges that the importer even reclassified a Mustang Cobra as an electric vehicle to obtain lower duties, with at least 40 vehicles believed to have passed through the scheme. The whistleblower also identified a man linked to a large Sheriff Street auto parts business as allegedly coordinating stolen vehicles from Canada, working with helpful shipping agents and organizing offloading and concealment on arrival in Guyana. Several Guyanese shipping companies have been named for allegedly adjusting manifests to hide the movement of illicit vehicles. Investigators believe a wider criminal network is active in Guyana, one that includes players who deliberately damage high-value vehicles locally to fuel demand for parts supplied by the illicit trade. Travis Chase, HGP Nightly News.
Join us after the break. We have more news for you. Welcome back. You with the HGP Nightly News. To address the scourge of gender-based violence, the Women and the Gender Equality Commission has called for the Family Violence Act of 2024 to be fully reinforced. This call was made during the third edition of the Convention on elimination of all forms of discrimination against women on Thursday. Antonio Day was there and filed this report.
The strengthening of constitutional protections that explicitly prohibit discrimination on the basis of sex, gender, marital status, and pregnancy. It must fully implement the Family Violence Act of 2024, the Sexual Offences Act.
That was Renata Chakasang, Chief Executive Officer of the Women and Gender Equality Commission, while delivering remarks during the 3rd annual conference of the convention to eliminate all forms of discrimination against women. She noted that during the conference, the Women and Gender Equality Commission will promote public awareness to eliminate all forms of discrimination, particularly against women. With Ghana being a signatory to CEDAW, this year's conference will focus on developing a roadmap to accelerate progress to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal number 5, gender equality, by 2030. Chakasang added that her organization has been lobbying for the reinforcement of the Prevention of Discrimination Act to effectively safeguard stereotype groups.
While protecting the expanding protections that would include marginalized groups, such as the LGBTQ community. Enacting a sexual harassment bill would serve to safeguard women in workplaces, in public institutions, and in our digital spaces.
The amendment of legislation such as the Family Violence Act of 2024 permits police officers to enter premises without a warrant in suspected cases of violence and requires charges to be laid within 48 hours. This legislation also covers violence by any family member, not just intimate partners, ensuring that every individual is supported and protected. Chakasang also alluded to other outdated laws she described as discriminatory towards women.
Abolish discriminatory statutory provisions that perpetuate harmful stereotypes. For example, our passport forms which require women to produce their marriage certificates. I don't think men are required to produce marriage certificates, even though they say they're married.
Antonio Day reporting for the HGP Nightly News.
On Wednesday, the representatives for the ruling People's Progressive Party civic government were a no-show at the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights hearing on dysfunctional Freedom of Information system. Hear more from Marvin Cato.
The hearing, which was held in Miami and live-streamed, saw the participation of civil society advocates Christopher Ram, Danuta Radzik, Vanda Radzik, and columnist GHK Lal, who also presented statements on behalf of Anand Gulsaran and Alfred Bulai. The commissioners present heard one familiar line of concern from each presenter: the refusal of the Minister of Information to release information or communicate receipt of requests for information. Since 2011, the Access to Information Act has been in effect, but more than a decade later, the intent of the act is not being followed. Concerned advocates requested of the current president in writing and via protest action a need for immediate change. However, that change is yet to come. Vice President Bharat Jagdeo, during one of his weekly press conferences, did allude to the fact that there will be some improvements in this area if they are returned to government. However, since re-election, there has been a deafening silence, and the absence at Wednesday's session leaves much to be desired. IACHR on its Facebook page indicated that civil society organizations reported persistent barriers to accessing public information in Guyana, including delays, limited implementation of the law regulating this area, and obstacles that affect society and can contribute to a civic and democratic crisis. It also highlighted that leading transparency organizations in the Caribbean have offered strong support for Guyana's civil society's Access to Information campaign, with Trinidad and Tobago's Transparency Institute and Jamaica's National Integrity Action commending the sustained, principled, and peaceful actions undertaken by journalists, civil society actors, members of parliament, trade unions, and concerned citizens in Guyana, who have collectively brought to light systemic non-compliance by the Guyana Office of the Commission of Information. The Transparency International chapters expressed grave concern about the failure of the executive to engage meaningfully with civil society on this constitutional matter. The organizations noted with particular concern the documented absence of public reporting, operational transparency, and meaningful responsiveness by the Commissioner's Office, stating these deficiencies contravene the letter and spirit of the Access to Information Act, but also undermine the rule of law and citizens' confidence in public institutions. IACHR says it regrets that the state of Guyana did not participate in the hearing and emphasized that access to information is essential for democratic participation and committed to keeping the situation of access to information in Guyana on the public agenda. It also stressed that access to information is a basic condition for democracy to function in a state. Marvin Cato reporting for HGP Nightly News.
President Irfan Ali has taken his cabinet to Region 6 as government continues to engage communities to address the many challenges facing them on a daily basis. Marvin Cato is on that story.
As part of our commitment, over the next 2 days, the whole of government and the cabinet will be operating from Region 6.
That was President Irfan Ali continuing what was executed from his first term in office, bringing government to the people in all 10 administrative regions.
As I've said before, whole of government led by the Office of the President will be operating from a different administrative region every month.
The President and team over the next 2 days will have intense engagements with regional officials and citizens of the region as they look into concerns affecting the region.
The entire cabinet will have a number of outreaches, listening, understanding the priorities from the ground.
Developmental projects in the area are expected to be visited and inspected, with the President expecting real-time updates.
Integrating that with our national development plan, our strategy, integrating that in the budget 2026, ensuring that our work continues to impact the lives of the people at the household level.
Recently, the President did indicate that a real-time digital monitoring system for projects will come on stream. However, this is an opportunity in the interim of having a first-hand look at developments in the region by the various ministries. Among the myriad of challenges facing the region includes infrastructure deficits, particularly incomplete roads and drainage projects, economic hardships, and social issues and access to a reliable water supply. With the People's Progressive Party Civic in office for more than 3 decades, residents continue to express a desire for an increase in the number of government engagements across communities. Marvin Cato reporting for HGP Nightly News.
More news after the break. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. You're with the HGP Nightly News. Another political heavyweight has walked away from the People's National Congress reform. More details from this Travis Chase report.
Former Mayor of Georgetown, Pandit Ubraj Narain, has resigned from the People's National Congress reform. In a letter addressed to the leader of the PNCR, Narain said he arrived at the decision after thoughtful consideration of his personal responsibilities and the future aspirations. The outspoken former mayor was contacted by Nightly News on Thursday after we got wind of his resignation.
Do you have any other political ambitions at this point?
I will remain Ubraj Narain. I am not going to really, and at this point of time, I will continue to serve the people in whatever capacity I can. I will continue to do my outreaches and to reach the people out there and be myself.
Narain said his involvement with the PNCR provided him with invaluable experiences, meaningful relationships, and opportunities to serve the people of Guyana with dedication and sincerity.
Is there a particular reason why you resigned from the PNCR?
Yes, the party continued to hemorrhage itself, both internally and externally. And the leadership seem very comfortable with it. He tends not to do anything about it. And I cannot continue in such a manner.
He added that he was hopeful the party's leadership posture would have changed following the 2025 general and regional elections.
Things have changed. Like after election, call a meeting with your members and so on and tell us the way forward. There's no way forward at this point of time. We don't know.
Narain now joins a growing list of political heavyweights who in recent times have resigned from the PNCR for various reasons, a sign, he suggests, that the party continues to hemorrhage internally. Travis Chase, HGP Nightly News.
The European Union Election Observer Mission has called for full independence of the Guyana National Broadcasting Authority by appointing board members in an impartial and inclusive manner. The EU's final report on the just concluded general and regional elections said it will ensure accountability through a transparent decision-making process. Antonio Day has that story.
In its report on the 2025 general and regional elections, European Union Election Observer Mission has recommended strengthening the independence of the broadcast media regulator, the Ghana National Broadcasting Authority, GNBA. The mission noted that this can be facilitated through the impartial and inclusive appointment of board members and ensuring its accountability via a transparent decision-making process. The European Union Observer Mission also highlighted that the legal and regulatory framework governing the media remains limited. Quoting, "The Constitution enshrines the right to freedom of expression, and in June 2025, criminal defamation was ruled unconstitutional. However, the government and business entities frequently employ costly and intricate civil defamation lawsuits to suppress critical journalism. Furthermore, the right to access information of public interest is not comprehensively protected," the report noted. It also noted that the current composition of the GNPA comprises mostly of the ruling party nominees. Its hearings are closed to the public, and the decision-making process is non-transparent, further eroding media trust in the regulator's impartiality and independence. The European Union Observer Mission observed that the ruling PPC government-dominated primetime election coverage on the state-run broadcaster. According to European Union Observer Mission, media monitoring, the Voice of Ghana Radio and NCN TV devoted up to 98% of the election-related coverage to the government and the incumbent president and his electoral contestants. Quoting, "Both media outlets covered in full all the ruling party's rallies held across the country," the report flagged. The Observer Mission recommended that the state-funded broadcaster guarantees equitable coverage to all contestants during the campaign and consider introducing provisions on free airtime for electoral contestants. It was also recommended that media campaign coverage rules be established in a timely and consultative manner to ensure equitable airtime and space for electoral contestants, as well as political advertising. Quoting, "Although the Broadcasting Act requires the GNB to issue election-related broadcasting guidelines, the regulator instead provided a non-binding advisory on its website, which had no effect on biased media coverage to the detriment of voters." End of quote. The European Union Observer Mission highlighted that among broadcast media, only privately owned HGP TV was inclusive, with news airtime equitably divided among all parties and mostly neutral in tone. It also noted that privately owned HA Boom Radio primarily featured opposition parties in its paid for airtime. Thus, broadcast coverage of the election campaign provided left voters with legitimate, objective information. Antonio Day reporting for the HGP Nightly News.
Stay tuned for regional news.
Good evening and welcome to Thursday's edition of the Regional News. I'm Antonio Day. We begin with news in Antigua. Antigua and Barbuda Prime Minister Gaston Brown has written to President Donald Trump, urging him to follow your instincts and continue to pursue dialogue and negotiation in de-escalating the tensions with Venezuela. The state-owned ABS station and television reported on Wednesday that Prime Minister Brown has sent a letter to President Trump expressing St. John's concern over the growing military build-up in international waters shared by Caribbean states. Brown is calling for renewed diplomatic engagement between Washington and Caracas to prevent escalation in the Caribbean region. President Trump has ramped up U.S. military presence in the Caribbean Sea, ordering an amphibious squadron to southern Caribbean as part of his efforts to address threats from Latin American drug cartels. A nuclear-powered attack submarine, additional P-8 Poseidon reconnaissance aircraft, several destroyers, and a guided missile cruiser have also been allocated to U.S. Southern Command as part of the mission. In addition, the U.S. largest carrier, the Gerald Ford, has joined the build-up. The United States military has been bombing vessels in international waters, claiming that the occupants were drug traffickers without offering any evidence of such activity. Turning attention to news in Jamaica, the World Bank, in coordination with the Inter-American Development Bank, estimate that the physical damage to Jamaica caused by Hurricane Melissa when it slammed into the country on October 28 totals $8.8 billion. The two financial institutions say that the estimate is equivalent to 41% of the country's 2024 gross domestic product, making it the costliest hurricane in Jamaica's recorded history. The Global Rapid Damage Estimation conducted immediately after the hurricane assessed physical damage across residential, non-residential, infrastructure, and agricultural sectors. It does not include economic losses, which are expected to be more significant. The grid assessment will inform a more detailed evaluation of damages and economic losses by sectors as part of a collaboration with the IDB and United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, under the leadership of the Planning Institute of Jamaica. According to the preliminary findings, 41% of the assessed damages were to residential buildings, 33% to infrastructure, 21% to non-residential buildings, and 5% to the agriculture sector, including livestock and related infrastructure. And finally, with international news. Gunmen kidnapped 25 girls and killed the vice principal at a school in Nigeria, according to police. The Nigeria police force said a gang of armed bandits with sophisticated weapons, shooting sporadically, stormed the government girls' comprehensive secondary school. The kidnappings occurred on Monday, November 17 in Maga, a city in the Kebbi state in northwestern Nigeria, according to police. The police tactical units deployed in the school engaged them into a gun duel, the police force said. Continuing, unfortunately, the suspected bandits had already scaled through the fence of the school and abducted 25 students from their hostel to an unknown destination. End of quote. Thank you for watching. I'm Antonio Day, and goodbye for now.
Let's now join Darwin Neblet for HGP's Sports Pulse.
Good evening, Guyana. I'm Darwin Neblet with your HGP TV Sports Pulse for today, Thursday, November 20, 2025. We begin tonight with cricket. Action commenced in the 2025 Cricket West Indies CG Insurance Super 50 Cup, with the Ghana Harpy Eagles taking on the Jamaica Scorpions at the Queen's Park Oval in Trinidad on Wednesday. Batting first after being sent in, Ghana reached 287 for 6 before rain stopped play, without any further action taking place in the match. Ghana's top order got off to an excellent start as both openers, Captain Matthew Nandu with 54 from 70 and Raymond Perez with 61 from 66, scored well-played half-centuries. Jamaica's Marquinhos Mindley and Brad Barnes each picked up 2 wickets, as Kevlon Anderson was also outstanding with a top score of 83 from 60 in the match that ended in a no result. The Ghana Harpy Eagles will take on the Windward Islands in their next match, scheduled for 9 hours on Friday at the Sir Frank Worrell Memorial Ground in St. Augustine. More in cricket, the West Indies under-19 take a 2-0 series lead against England after securing victory in the second youth ODI at the Grenada National Stadium in St. George's on Wednesday. Batting first, England reached 160 for 5 before the match was interrupted. The captain Farhan Ahmed top scored with 46 from 51 as Caleb Falconer added 42 from 52. Jakeem Pollard was the pick of the bowlers for the West Indies, taking 2 for 20 as Jai Gittins, Shaquan Bell and Jonathan Van Lang each picked up 1 wicket. When the West Indies under-19 responded, opener Ersinio Fontaine played well for 39 from 65 as Guyanese all-rounder Jonathan Van Lang remained unbeaten on 57 from 34 to propel the hosts to 192 for 4 and a commanding 6-wicket victory via the DLS method. Match number 3 in the 7-match series is scheduled for Friday, November 21st at the Grenada National Stadium. Moving into football, action resumed in the Ghana Football Federation's Division 1 Women's League 2025 with 2 fixtures at the National Training Center in Providence on Wednesday. The first match was a thrashing 11-0 victory for the Ghana Defence Force FC over the Mainstay Gold Stars, while match number 2 was also a commanding 10-1 victory for the Ghana Police Force FC over Riversview United FC. Inter-Rugby, Guyana's national men's and women's rugby 7 squads have secured valuable pre-tournament assistance from the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport ahead of the upcoming Rugby America's North Sevens Championship. Set for November 21 to 23 at the Larry Gomes Stadium in Arima, Trinidad and Tobago, the tournament carries significant weight, serving as both a regional showpiece and a direct qualifier for major international competitions. Victorious men's and women's Tier 1 teams will advance to the prestigious World Rugby Sevens pathway, while top finishers will also earn spots at the 2026 Central American and Caribbean Games in Santo Domingo. Prior to departure, the Honorable Ministers Charles Ramsden Jr. and Stephen Jacobs met with the Ghana Rugby Football Union, delivering new equipment and financial assistance. GRFU President Ryan Day welcomed the enhanced backing, highlighting it as the most robust government support the union has seen in many years. Further strengthening the team's preparation, His Excellency the President, Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali, arranged complimentary access to elite conditioning facilities at Fitness 53, operated by former West Indies captain Ramnaresh Sarwan. This year's event also marks the return of a revitalized women's sevens team, the nation's first in nearly a decade, led by Captain Sabola Gray, as they challenge Mexico, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago for one of 2 qualification spots. Meanwhile, the men's side, guided by Captain Lionel Holder, enters a demanding Tier 1 group featuring regional giants such as Canada, Mexico, and Trinidad and Tobago. Tournament logo released as Guyana prepares to host Senior Caribbean Squash Championships. Continuing a year of tangible accomplishments, the Guyana Squash Racket Association, GSRA, is moving apace to ensure successful hosting of the 2025 Caribbean Area Squash Association Championships, beginning Saturday, November 23 and concluding on November 29 at the home of squash in the National Racket Center on Wolford Avenue in Georgetown. The event will feature over 130 of the best squash players from 9 member associations of the Caribbean territories, competing in singles and doubles in male and female divisions. Participating teams will emerge from the Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Bermuda, Cayman Islands, Guyana, Jamaica, and the OECS, which features a combined team from Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, the British Virgin Islands, Dominica, Grenada, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The tournament's logo, an interplay of 2 hummingbirds, Jamaica's national bird, the swallowtail, and the crimson topaz of Guyana, with a squash ball, is symbolic of both countries' fauna heritage, cultural sensitivity, and sporting camaraderie. Due to the impact of Hurricane Melissa on Jamaica, the organizing capacity of the National Squash Association, availability of modern facilities, and ongoing collaborative support from the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport and the National Sports Commission, the tournament was shifted to the Cooperative Republic of Guyana for a 2nd consecutive year. And that's it for this edition of the HGP TV Sports Pulse. I'm Delwyn Neblet, reminding you to stay in the game.
President livid over EU observer mission's final report on the conduct of the 2025 electoral process. Claudette Singh accused of decommissioning the commission. 2 opposition-nominated commissioners say abide by the law or resign. Operation Project MYRA, serial car thief details luxury cars scheme. PPPC government in no-show at IACHR hearing on dysfunctional freedom of information system. And in sport, Culture Ministry steps up support for men and women's rugby sevens squad. Those are our major headlines. For these stories and more, please go to our website. It's www.hgptv.com. I'm ALETHEA Grant. Thanks for watching.